This is a parcel that comes from a company called PCB Way, a PCB manufacturing company, among other things. I'm sure you've heard of it yourself. And this parcel here contains my first custom PCB, where it should allow me to make my 4-key macro keyboard. And after opening it, I did want it opened up on camera. I could not wait. It was a disaster. Everything from the shell that was meant to hold the PCB up until the actual visual look of the PCB itself. However, if you want to see, you could also skip, but I do suggest going it bit by bit in order for you to get the whole thought process of how I got to this position right now. And I do ask you, keep an open mind. This was my first attempt. Assalamu alaikum, welcome everyone to another project video. Before I go into showing the files of the 3D printed shell and the PCB, I want to give Joe Scudder his credit. If you go into this man's channel, click on playlists, he has a few of them, all revolving around keyboards and macro keyboards. The one that I made use of is called PCB Design. Here he utilizes a free software called KiCad, where he also provides his own resources, making the whole process easy. I highly suggest checking him out. Here is the PCB and schematic side by side. I make use of the Arduino Pro Micro, 4 switches and 4 diodes for each respective switch. And as you can see, for each of the 2 columns of keys, one is labeled Audacity, the other is labeled OBS, which is hinting towards the actual purpose of this PCB. And if I was to open up the 3D viewer, we can see that the Pro Micro and the keys are on top and the diodes are on the bottom. This will also work against me later when we come to the shell, but we'll leave that till then. Up until now, I still haven't soldered everything. Just by looking at the PCB, I think I could have moved the Pro Micro a little bit more forward and reduced the space for the text. I think it takes up a little bit too much. But up until now, I think the PCB, especially in the 3D viewer, is perfect. This is the Blender file. It consists of 3 modified cubes. The main one, taking the bulk of the shape, has 2 Boolean modifiers for each of the other 2 cubes. And you can see the dimensions outlined. The problem is that I did not have any calipers or any proper measuring tools, so I kind of just eyed it. The KiCad software does have a ruler, but I did not use it properly, I believe, which is the reason why the PCB does not fit in the final 3D printed product. And I completely forgot about the diodes that I put at the back of the PCB, which I came to notice after I opened the parcel. And you may be questioning why I chose to continue with Blender. It is not an actual CAD software. There is an add-on which I added, but that doesn't improve its functionality to such an extent where it competes with other mainstream CAD softwares. My reasoning was, okay, if I'm going to continue doing Blender animation, I might as well get comfortable with the software. So I thought maybe I can get more experience through projects like these, the ones that consists of low poly 3D printed products. And now me personally, I don't like the idea of me paying monthly for the use of a CAD software, especially at the price that it is. They all tend to be a little bit pricey, and my use tends to be quite low when it comes to 3D printed products. I don't even have a 3D printer. And I think that's enough of a good reason to explain the carcinogenic block that I made. This is the package that I received from PCB Way. I did open it pre-hand because I could not wait out of excitement. However, I did package it back the same. You do have to order a minimum quantity of 5 for the PCB, and that obviously costs a little bit more, but it is what it is. And this is the block of plastic that I bought. Now, the problem with the PCB, there's 2 things. I had the pinholes on the sides. There should have been 4 in the corner, and I'm missing the silk screen for the wiring. And when I try to fit it, surprisingly, it does not actually fit together, which is very nice. I will be using a PCB holder to assist me. The PCB, 4 diodes, 4 MX Blue Cherry switches, the Pro Micro itself. I will begin by clipping the PCB board onto the PCB holder, and in fact, this is the first time that I'm using it. The order that I add in the components is quite crucial. I begin by adding the Pro Micro and adding some solder. From here I add onto both sides, and I only solder a few pins in order for me to connect the PCB to the Pro Micro, and when I turn the PCB upside down, the Pro Micro does not fall down. After I achieve this, I end up soldering everything else off camera, and I think I did a good job. I added a decent amount of solder to everything, maybe a little bit messy, but I'm happy with how it went. Then I remove 4 diodes. These diodes are also oriented in such a way that on the same column that they face opposite to each other. I begin by sewing them through. I had the idea of just adding their legs through their respective wires and just soldering the point of contact. I actually had difficulty removing the excess wiring, and you're going to see this later. I did this 3 more times, and now I'm soldering all the point of contacts after adding flux. And I've noticed that my soldering hastiness has gotten a lot better. I'm a lot more efficient to it, and I add a little bit more. It was obviously a different environment than just soldering onto pin headers and whatnot, but it was a good exposure. I like. This is how it turned out, quite messy even after chopping the excess. However, they don't come in contact with the other points of contact, so it'll do with me. Soldering onto the MX Blue Cherry switches was a little bit difficult because I didn't have anything else to hold it and anchor it from the bottom. So I just used my pinky. At first I used one of the gooseneck arms, and then I quickly ditched that idea. However, it went through and smoothly with me, column first, and then I moved on to the Audacity after switching it. And I repeated the same procedure of using my pinky and applying pressure upwards and soldering it. And it went alright. I tried even moving it around to make sure that it's soldered well, and it was good enough for me. And now if I was to just test it, you can quickly hear everything works. After including the keyboard library, I told the Arduino that all the pins utilized will become variables. In the void setup, I told the Arduino that the pins will be input pull-up, as I do not make use of any resistors, with a delay of 3000 and initiating the serial monitor at a baud rate of 9600. In the void loop with an if statement, I told that if any of the keys have a state of 1, which is the natural state when they are not pressed, then do nothing. All the other if statements follow the same format, that if the Pro Micro detects a key with a state of 0, then release a key that's part of the function keys. I make use from F19 up until F24. In the end Audacity recording, I also add an additional button of space, which I could not perform in the AutoHotkey script. I begin by making variables for both the name of the softwares and their directories. If the F19 function key is pressed, which starts the Audacity recording, 3 things occur. If the window does not exist, then it runs and activates audacity.exe. If the window is not active and it exists, then it activates it and brings it up front. If the window is active, then it presses R, which initiates the Audacity recording. The F20 function key activates the Audacity window, and utilizing the Arduino section of the code that I explained before, space is pressed, which ends the recording. The F21 function key behaves the same as the F19, just for OBS and to start the recording. If the window is not active but it exists, then activate the OBS window. If the window is active, then press F22, which starts the recording. If the window does not exist, then run OBS. The F23 key is in charge of pressing F24, which ends and stops the recording. Now I'll test the keyboard and make a demonstration for. I'm going to begin by connecting to the computer, and then I'm going to run the script. And after doing so, I'm going to press the appropriate keyboards. Pressing this one should launch up OBS. And pressing it again should start the recording. And pressing the one under it should stop the recording. And pressing this one should open up Audacity. And pressing again the same button, it should start up the recording after showing a message box. And pressing the one under it should stop the recording. And there we go. So it works. Obviously this is a concept project and it's not actually meant to be a proper one that I'm meant to be using. There's a lot of room for improvements. The case, as you can see, it still moves, so it's not really balanced under and whatnot. However, it's something where I can start off and improve and move on from. I decided to develop a website to pair with the channel, and if you wish to access this project, go on Projects, 4-key custom macro keyboard, and you will see all the written information regarding this. If you wish to support the channel, consider subscribing, and if you learn anything from the video, consider giving it a like, and if you wish to join the small community that I'm trying to build, my Discord will be linked in the description.